I suffer from jet lag, so I'm actually doing my presentation standing up to ensure that I don't sleep with you. But on the other hand, maybe I'll have a few things I'm going to say this afternoon which may raise, I wouldn't say about raising your temper, but definitely your blood pressure. Basically, first of all, I'd like to thank Eustace for inviting me again to present here at the Mare Forum. I always find that this session is always one of the best which I've actually attended to, the ones which are organised by Mare Forum, because it makes you think out of the box, number one. And number two, I find it highly educational. A lot of people come here to speak to mention what they're going to say. I come here to learn. As I mentioned to my kids, I'm just beginning my career. About environmental care, we've heard the speakers this morning about all the process and all the infrastructure required for the development of the oil and offshore industries. One thing which I think we all have to have in mind is that irrespective of the commercial considerations which are attached to the oil and gas process in terms of satisfying our energy requirements, there's no point in satisfying our energy requirements if we don't have the world we want to live in. So effectively, we're going to make sure that we're going to win the war rather than the battle. It's very easy to go and think in terms of going ahead to make this progress in this industry, which is a fairly young industry, as we all know. We're all learning this. It's quite new. We're on a learning curve. I think everybody in this room is on a learning curve. But one thing which I'm always concerned about is that, to protect our world, to protect the environment, and it is definitely by far a number one priority. Now, I'll focus more, being Greek and being fairly patriotic. I'm going to focus my main issue around the environmental issues, but I'll talk basically about Greece. Now, Greece, as you probably know, we have the findings that our friends earlier, Mr. Ross, Mr. Kostamboulis, who are more familiar with the logistics of this matter. There is more than, no doubt in my mind that there is a sufficient amount of gas and oil in Greece to be developed. But having said that, there are the risks which we have to face. Number one, with the primary risk, is the fact that we have the depth of water, which is in excess of 3,000 meters in most areas. Second, we have the issue about being a seismic sea bottom, which also can cause problems. And when you go into the commercial issues, as you can appreciate, you've already heard so far, it's a highly capital-intensive business, and all the technology which comes out, either will be for the floating LNG or the compressed natural gas, they still have to be very, very expensive operations. I'll go back to also what our friend Philippe Mbirikos mentioned, which is a very valid point, is that a lot of our speakers this morning talked about all the issues and all the infrastructure which we have to develop, but there's no point in mentioning things if you don't know what the price is. It's like going shopping somewhere and you're told what's good for you, what isn't good for you, what suits you, but at the end of the day, you have to pay the price. So it's very, very important that throughout these sessions that we literally do have to ensure that they have to be cost-related to ensure that we know what we can actually tolerate. Now, the first issue you can read off my slide anyway, I won't go into those, they're basic. The basic thing which I want to mention and highlight is the last couple of lines which mentions commerce is a great uniter. Now, what I mean by that is that because a lot of these areas you have political issues, you have political unrest, and I think if people can start thinking out of the box and use the Greek word called synergy, which we hardly ever use in Greece, unfortunately, that was an issue which may put things together for people to realize that if you go around this directive in the right way, the one thing he loses. All sides have something to gain, and something to lose for those who are not going to perform and come in with the element of synergy. The financing of these projects, as I mentioned, is quite difficult. It's a highly capital-intensive business. George Kayales, who's here, will probably give you more detail about how we're standing in terms of the lack of money or the money which we need, even in the basic business. So you can appreciate that a sector like this is very capital-intensive. Now, this picture I presume you're all familiar with. We're all familiar with the disaster as well. Absolute tragedy. I think, well, besides the fact that I think it's costing the industry, well, the Shell, the BP rather, in excess of what, $15 billion, if I remember during the last count. It's still an issue which causes devastating damage to the area, and on the saying that, it's a situation which, in our mind, at least in our part of the world, we don't want this repeated. It's very easy to happen, and basically, on the other hand, if one is a bit more proactive, it's very easy and fairly simple to be able to take protective measures in order for it not to happen. Self-sustaining as well, easy to find out. Prevention is always better than repair, because a repair is always effectively, even though people avoid spending money sometimes on preventive maintenance, we find that the breakdown maintenance, drawing a parallel with the shipping industry, definitely proves to be far more expensive and far more traumatic in this case than waiting for things bad to happen. In shipping, what will happen what may happen in shipping will happen. Now, the environmental and health safety standards are actually in the process of being placed for the offshore supply industry. Malta has actually been fairly proactive in putting schemes together for the offshore side. There are certain laws and regulations which are geared to have a compliance with this particular industry, which is, as I say, it's new. And the reason why I have to highlight this is that we see these slides every day of the week in the shipping sector, but a lot of the aspects here are aspects which, in fact, the offshore and the supply industry is not particularly familiar with. One thing which actually needs a very, very high focal point of being emphasized is training. You can never get anything better than education. Training is the basic prerequisite to form any kind of preventive measure in any sector of our life. In Greece, as you can see, we have our natural beauty, we've got our cultural background, we've got long 5,000 years of history, and this is one extra reason why we wouldn't want a situation where we're trying to bring up the commercial considerations and have the earning capacity or the energy requirements which we may bring to service in Greece, and find that we've actually shot ourselves in the foot by actually ruining our environment, which, as you probably all know, is by far one of the nicest places in the world. As you can see, tourism is our main income. I don't know, I'll ask my friend Eustace to decide whether he finds the lady laying down or the one standing up is which one he finds more attractive, to give a bit more buzz to this, but effectively it's also quite a big tourism. Okay. Now this is another crucial point here, is that the official debt in Greece, as it stands now, is in the order of 300 billion. Now, I won't start penny pinching whether it's 280 or 310, because these figures differ depending on where we get our resources from. But I take the view that, first of all, earlier on we talked about all these predictions about what one feels about the price of oil, because obviously the gas scenario, how you're going to emanate or work on gas, depends on whether it's going to be financially viable in comparison with the price of oil. Now, when you get the big major oil companies of the likes of Shell, for example, who mentioned that they anticipated the oil price would be in excess of $50 or $60 over the next few years, or around that era, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's going to be something which could be drastically different than what they predict. It's almost the same when you go to your banker and ask him what stock to buy or which dollar currency should go into. What I do, what I've been doing for the last 25, 30 years, I phone the banker, I ask him, people who have experience in all the infrastructure and everything involved, which is at hand, I ask him what he thinks about the whole scenario, and if he says, you know, we'll sell the dollar or whatever he says, I'll put the phone down, do the exact opposite, and somehow come out on top for the wrong reasons. So here we've got the same situation. We owe 300 billion. Greece has enough gas resources to literally provide the whole of Europe with their energy requirements for the next 100 years. Now, that is something which I've read about. I'm not an expert, but I've got a lot of people around me who may question what I'm saying, but it is a view which has been very strongly supported. And I find that effectively, if we can just read this slide carefully, and then come to this one, then we can realize that this government, or any other government for that matter, if they take their life seriously, and they look at our situation of being proud, of being literally harmonious, and actually being respectful of the country which they represent. That's a hint, by the way our friend is dressed. Basically, it's a matter of our government being able to look at the situation, what we have in Greece, literally respect and appreciate and, and be grateful for this factor that we have the most beautiful country in the world, and we have the resources to feed ourselves and to feed the entire Europe. But it takes guys like this to be a bit more respectful, and whether they're going to be in place the next few months or next few years, I don't know. I'm not a politician. But I think these people who represent us should literally take on board the fact that they do have a very precious country, and they should literally cover it and respect it accordingly, especially what they have in mind. Thank you very much.